Yes. Yes,
Hello,
I'm
everybody.
ready.
My name is Jordan.
And I am Matthew.
There we go. Okay, and now we are going to talk about share Peru. And this is messing up. Whoops! Do not mind this slide. Boop and start. All right, now we're going to be talking about Peru. And then Matthew will start.
So, Peru is located in South America, and it can be found in the northwest region of it, touching Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Bolivia, and Chile.
And we're going to go ahead and go back to the first slide to take a look at the flag. So the flag, this flag was actually designed in 1825. It did change the flag multiple times throughout its existence. So this flag we're going to talk about the coat of arms. So this flag right here is a shield, is framed by a reef and of palm and laurel branches, and then the shield, and the shield is divided into three parts, and is symbolic nation, and it represents the pride and wealth of Peru. So you see right here, this is I can't pronounce it, but I think it's a vicuna, Vicuna. It's kind of like a llama or an alpaca. This right here is supposed to represent the rich families of Peru. And then this is the cornucopia. This is just a cornucopia, which is a sign for the mineral wealth that Peru is known for. So now we're going to talk about the demographics. So there's actually about 32.971 million people that live in that live in Peru, and 7.7 of them live in Lima, which is about 25%. A little bit more. The number 43 in the world of population. Their average life expectancy is 77.4 years. Females' life expectancy is 80.2, and males is actually 74.9. They have about 2.7 births per woman, and about 79.1% of their population is urban, which is 25.7 million people, and they have about 66 people per square mile. Now we're going to go ahead and get into the history. Matthew?
So Peru's history begins with like the Incan people, and they're considered to be it's an early establishment, but the stories of them developed later on, and it changed when Pizarro, a Spanish explorer, found the Incas in 1532, and there he slowly gained his influence in the Incan society, and so eventually Spain, because he was a Spanish agent, undermined Pizarro's power in 1544, and they started to implement viceroyalities, and these lasted into the 18th centuries. And in 1545, the mine for precious metals, Potosi, was created. And also, a little side fact: the Inca society had actually gained 380,000 miles of territory. So they were a rather large society then. Next slide. So in the 1700s, the Bourbon dynasty took hold in Spain, and this changed a lot. So new viceroys were given different territories. They kind of split up Peru, so it wasn't as big of a territory as it was before. And then these viceroyalities lasted until the Napoleonic invasion of Spain, in which Peru remained loyal, but Peru achieved independence by means of outsiders. So the reason why the outsiders were like moving in to take over Peru was because of the mines that resided there. And independence was declared in 1821, and Peru's independence was ensured in 1824.
Now, a fun fact really about this is that even though they were considered to be independent by Peru standards, Spain did actually not recognize them as an individual nation until later on in their thing. This did provide a lot of solutions politically and socially as well, but did not answer a lot of economic problems, especially since there was a lot of political instability after this till 1845. So basically, it was a lot of generals coming up and fighting against each other. There was a constitution established in 1828, but didn't really do a whole lot for them. They still fought over it. There were multiple generals who actually took power until um, the new constitution was adopted in 1860. So a little bit goes on more, and Spain actually comes to fight Peru. They actually sent a naval force to the Pacific. In 1869, they actually did withdrew from Peru and Chile because they still owned a lot of the South American land. So a lot more keeps happening. This is actually a very complicated history with politically and economically. Um, but just to skip a little bit, in 1871, to stop the military rule, the civilian party was created. It was led by Manuel Prado. Um, he um, he actually did a lot in creating railroads in Peru and actually connected Peru quite well, and it did a lot internally with it. And then a lot kept happening in that until 1879, when they fought the war in against Chile and they actually lost. They just exchanged land. A new constitution was also established in 1920, but that was not. But 4 years later, the American Popular Revolutionary Alliance was formed in New Mexico City. So basically, this was the whole idea around the APRA, which is what it's short for, is that they did not like Americans' imperialism and also did not like the idea of capitalism in their society. So they basically outlawed it. And it seemed like it was an international thing with a few different nations, especially since it was in Mexico City itself. But the party itself actually did rival the civilian party for a little while as well. And then still with a lot of political turmoil in 1931, there was actually a presidential election, but the fascist group actually said the election was rigged, and then did a whole bunch of things to event such as bombing. I believe they bombed Lima a little bit and some other cities until they took over power in 1933 for a little bit, but then they started becoming the party that fought the APRA party for about 50 years. More goes on a little bit, and due to the civilian party actually like coming up and running, they actually were helped to ally in World War II with the U.S. and the U.S. were stationed in Peru, and they actually declared war in 1945. In 1948, Manuel Ordora took power as a dictatorship and actually did a lot very well for the economy and political stability. Because remember, it's still crazy. There was a lot of, it's still pretty much a military state. A lot of generals keep fighting. And then they increased foreign trade under his dictatorship as well for economics with the Korean, with trading a lot of minerals in the 1950s for the Korean War. And then the election of 1956, this was really important because not only it showed the decline of the APRA, this election actually led to the GDP rising annually about 4.5% every single year. In 1986, military rule finally ended, and it put a strain on relations. It put a strain on the relations with the U.S. I'm sorry, not ended. It kind of, so it ended and then it reignited basically in the 1940s. In the 1980s, it reignited. And then there was a new constitution in 1979. And then pretty much since then, it's been a lot of economic reform, such as new currency was created as well. It was a lot to include in the history. So I tried to bunk it down as much as possible. Now we're going to talk about visuals.
So on to our visuals. So the first one on the left of the screen, on our left of the screen, is from a celebration in January called the Anniversary of Lima. And that's where they celebrate, yeah, the building of Lima. The middle one is a picture of Machu Picchu, which is one of the world's seven wonders that can be found in Peru. And then the picture off to the right is a picture of a dance called the Marinera.
Okay, now we're going to talk about Hofstede information. So we have the blue is actually Peru and the purple is the US. So just to talk about what each of them means, power distance means the more likely to accept inequality. So the higher it is, the lower the chance for the more inequality they have, and the more that they'll basically not care about it or they won't speak about it. So in Peru, you can see there's about 64, and then the US about 40. The next one is going to be individualism. So basically how much they have like as like an individualist. So in the United States, as you can see, we have a very high individualist society, while in Peru they have a very low individual society, or they call it collectivism. So they're more likely to go with the people than they are by themselves. The best way that I can explain it is like, imagine raising your hand in class. There's a lot of people who don't really want to stand out, so they don't raise their hand, which would be Peru. While there's also people in the class who will speak for themselves and what they want, and so they'll raise their hand, and that will be individualists. Masculinity is basically how much society is dictated on, like that's like a masculine, like men are in charge sort of thing. You can see actually Peru is has a less masculinity level than they do as the United States, which has 62. The uncertainty avoidance, this one's a little bit more tricky. So the higher uncertainty avoidance they have, the more strict they are in the way they're thinking, and the more they want to be told what's going to happen. They're really insecure with the idea of the unknown. While if you have a lower uncertainty avoidance, you don't really care. You're a little bit more laid back, and like you're just like, whatever happens, happens. As you can see, that the Peru is okay. I mean, it's not okay with not knowing what's going to happen in the near future, while the United States doesn't really have to know. So the next one is actually the long-term ordinance, or it's PRA. So basically, the more it has, the more conservative thinking that they have. So it's more of the traditional way of thinking, and not really with progressive ideals. So as you can see, that both are pretty low. And then for indulgence, it's basically the idea of feeling the need for gratification and to have fun. As you can see, in the United States, we are more likely to indulge than we are as Peru. The next one we're going to be talking about is our special topic. So our special topic was talking about different delivery models for ELL learners and how effective they are. So there are three different types, really. I'm just going to, two different types, and there's one random one that they don't really fit into anything. So the first one are going to be ESL program models. So most of these actually have a minority of a very, has a very diverse language minority population. So they'll have multiple different types of languages. So the three of they are is ESL pullout, which basically is mainly used for elementary school. It's where you pull them out of their main class and you go do extra instruction. There's also class period, which is a whole class period dedicated to English learning. That is more common in middle school and high school. Then we also have the ESL Resource Center. So this one is basically a variation of the pullout design, but it actually brings students from different classrooms and even schools together into one room. The next one are the bilingual models. So basically they have a large number of students. There's not a really whole bunch of diversity in it. So there's not really a whole lot of different language groups. And they usually are grouped to their language since they do have a large number of people. So the first one, we're going to start with early exit. So it doesn't mean that they push them out of, it basically means that they're going to start with basic introduction in the first language, like in elementary school, but they're not going to keep going on with it for a few years. So basically, like, they're going to teach with their first language and with English, and then once they know the basics, they kind of kick them out. In late exit programs, it's actually the opposite, where you stay actually for a little bit longer. You stay to the end of elementary school, actually. And about 40% of all this instruction is in their first language. The next one is a two-way bilingual model. So what this is that there's one language background, or whatever language it is, with a large minority and a large majority, about 50% of the class you want. And the way this is taught is that you actually have both languages being taught inside the same classroom. There can be two teachers, or there can be one teacher. If you do have, but one of them has to be bilingual if you're going to have two teachers. The next one is our other programs. So this one, the first one is Sheltered English, our content-based program. So basically the whole idea of these is that they don't really focus on the English as much. It is an immersion process. So like if you go to a new country, if I go to France, they're only going to speak in French to me. They're not going to know that I'm English. So they're going to just immerse in the language of English with visual aids and gestures to help guide the process of learning. They also have structured immersion. So there's no explicit ESL instruction in this one. It's pretty much just strictly subject-based as usual. There is a they did suggest that you have to have a very strong immersion teacher. That's what they said in order to do structured immersion. Now we're going to go into the effectiveness of these. So there was a lot of different research that I looked up, and I couldn't really find an explicit answer, but it looked like the models where two languages are taught are actually more effective. It would also worth noting that compared to ESL early exit and late exit programs were actually considered to be more effective, and they actually went farther into their English as well. They would at first show low test scores compared to their English counterparts that actually know English, but they would actually score about the same or even higher if you test them at the end of elementary school, middle school, or high school. The ones that don't really teach the languages together are not usually the best. These are our citations. And we are done. All right, guys, that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for watching.